koutou katoa. Welcome to a very full panel over the back there, members of the public. Welcome to the media and councillors to this meeting of the Community and Environment Committee. We kick off with public forum, and we're going to start with Bradley Kernell from the Aromoana Ecological Reserve. Bradley, would you like to come and join us? I understand you have a presentation today. Welcome.
I'd just like to bring my friends here, Sir Alan Martin and Janet as well.
Thank you. Welcome, Sir Alan and Janet. Yeah. And Bradley, you're speaking today on behalf of the Aromoana Ecological Reserve, which is a group, which means that you have 10 minutes to speak, and then we'll follow that with some questions.
Thank you very much. There's our logo, which is, I'm chairman of the Aromoana Conservation Trust. 2.5 years ago, I spoke to this forum about our concerns about the Aromoana jetty and the need for some consultation, and sadly none has happened. But anyway, I see some new faces here today. So we were a conservation group last time I talked, but since then we've become legal and we're a charitable trust. And our bird there is the oyster catcher, which of course is the link between the present day and the past. And these two people either side of me, of course, were involved in the Save Aromoana campaign back in the 1970s. I was too young to remember that. So we're very serious about what we believe is happening to the Aromoana Ecological Reserve. So there's a black and white photo of the area. Thank you very much. So we have the spit, which is sticking out there into Otago Harbour, and to the right is the salt marsh, which is an internationally recognised salt marsh of importance, and the entire complex of wetland there, there's only 2 of them in the entire world. Am I correct in that?
The Atlantic survey of it in the 70s ranked it of national importance, and there weren't many others around the country that were of national importance. Salt marsh, as you'll appreciate, have been abused in most parts for rubbish disposal and other uses. Aromoana, for one reason or another, has stayed fairly pristine, so certainly of national significance on a national survey scale.
So here we're dealing with the jetty, which is the end of the spit there, and council was proposing to redo it, to fix it up, and we're unsure of what sort of use. And it is part of the Aromoana Ecological Reserve, and as you can see, we do have a few problems at Aromoana. In fact, we have more than a few problems in protecting our area. And there's 2 sea lions. That photo was taken about 12 months ago. I was down there this morning, and there were several sea lion tracks. Now, I've been kind of rehearsing this in my head of what I was going to say to you all, and I guess it's a real plea to please listen to what we have to say, because those are critically endangered sea lions. They're not rare, they're not precious, they're critically endangered. Their next step is extinction on the list, so please hear us out. And at Aromoana, the jetty was disused and it fell to bits, and there were no sea lions. And then, of course, Mum came back, and we have that new statue. And so the sea lions came back to Aromoana, and they occupied the piece of spit at the end, and they haul up there. And they breed there, and they do all sorts of other things at the end of the spit. So the sea lions came back to us, they came back to all the people of Otago. And so we can go down there and quietly watch them roll around and do things that sea lions do. But with any management of a critically endangered species, we worry about what impact a jetty may have on their habitat, because we have 2 sea lions who have been born there in recent history, Lena and BK, and we worry if there is a jetty at the end of the spit that their habitat's going to be eroded away. You know, where in the future are we going to have areas where sea lions can give birth, where they can breed, where they can just be sea lions? And the answer is there's not very many places left in Otago. And given that they're critically endangered and that they live in an Aramoana ecological reserve, which is next in status to a national park, and DOC are entrusted with their legal care. So today is really about saying to you guys as elected officials, please come to Aramoana and talk to us. We really, really want you to talk to us, because we're really feeling left out of this entire process. And what I'm really going to say from the Aramoana point of view, that in terms of us as people, you know, it's like you guys, the proposal steals our treasure. You know, we talk to these sea lions, we help them along, we roll in penguin poo, we get tree nettle, because ours is a first-hand knowledge of these mammals. We're not just here sticking up for them out of some great deed, but these are mammals that we interact with and we want them in our future. So please, councillors, you all have to assure us as a community that we're going to be able to do that. Not necessarily just for me or Adrian or everyone else around here, but for the mammals themselves. So that was what I was going to say right at the end, but I just felt like saying it all now. So I'll have some more pictures. There's one having a bit of a sunbathe, and thanks to Adrian over there for being awake at 5 o'clock in the morning to send us these pictures too. And there's one laughing or smiling, can't quite work out what. And that there is a sea leopard. Sea leopards occasionally visit Aramoana, particularly in winter. And when they do actually come to Aramoana, they're not very well. They're not very healthy because they've swum all the way from Antarctica and they've arrived in our beaches half exhausted, because they don't breed in coastal Otago, they breed in Antarctica. But they've still got a really formidable mouth. And so they're another marine species which occupies Aramoana. And that there is a yellow-eyed penguin. In March they come ashore and they moult. And we do have a colony under the cliff. And last spring, much to my surprise, me and the dog were being looked at by an adult yellow-eyed penguin with a chick. And it was this side of Keyhole Rock. So it was kind of in the wrong place. It wasn't in the fully protected space. But anyway, I was talking to the Yellow-Eyed Penguin Symposium, whatever weekend that was. And in terms of yellow-eyed penguins, where are their homes going to be in the future? This is a 100-year wharf. Do we think that yellow-eyed penguins in 30 years' time are going to be breeding and nesting all through the Aramoana Ecological Reserve? I'd really hope so. So we need to make sure that whatever development we make, you have room for the yellow-eyed penguin. And people in this room here have mortgaged their houses right at the beginning of time to save these birds. It's a massive conservation effort. And here's one hiding, because last year we were lucky enough to work with DOC and actually going out and looking for penguins and counting their nests, and then we came back a few weeks later and we looked at the chicks to make sure the chicks were fit and healthy. There's no dysphoria. There's no dysphoria in this population of penguins at Aramoana. There is on the Otago Peninsula, and that makes them especially valuable in terms of survival of an endangered species. So we have 2 endangered species. If you add Hector's dolphins, that's 3. And if you add the albatross, that's at least 4 endangered species. There may be more, I don't know. And here's a perennial problem. This is, believe it or not, is a yellow-eyed penguin colony, and some idiot's got in there with a motorbike. And last but not least is our beautiful salt marsh. And this is a drone shot taken in June. It's just, not sure how you would describe it. Alan, do you want to talk to this?
Certainly the tyre marks on the salt marsh are almost, well, they're semi-permanent, but they're quite damaging. Most of you will realise the salt marsh vegetation is quite short. It's mostly of succulent plants, highly vulnerable to vehicle tyres of that nature, so that those imprints are likely to last decades. And on our salt marsh of national significance, I think is quite undesirable, quite unacceptable. As Bradley said, this is an ecological area. It's one of the highest categories short of a national park in terms of its status. The recognised values are both plant and animal. It was a Forest Service category initiated during the 70s when the Forest Service was looking at particular areas right around New Zealand. And when Dennis Marshall, as Minister of Conservation, opened this, he noted the particular importance, relevance of it being an ecological area. So important for migratory birds, wading birds, and the salt marsh is the fundamental basis for their existence. So from an aesthetic point of view, from an environmental point of view, from a national perspective, I think that's quite unacceptable. The question is, what do we do about it? And we are working with Department of Conservation, looking at options, and at this stage I think we haven't got the answer, but we are concerned with the future of a possible jetty at the end of the spit there, which will perhaps further promote this sort of activity.
Thank you, Alan. I think that's... Do you want to say anything, Janet?
Just very quickly, from a forest and bird point of view, we've got these endangered sea lions. They love that patch by the jetty. Disturbance from increased traffic because the jetties are going concern for all boats. It's not a good lookout for them. They're not only got a New Zealand endangered species rating, there's an international endangered species rating. Please think very hard about these animals before any final decisions are made about that jetty, because we only get one chance at this. So that's all I had for it.
Thank you very much. That's
Are
us.
you happy to take questions if there are any?
Yes, thank you, yes.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Noon.
Thanks, Bradley. With regards to the concession process that is about to be triggered by the staff requirement of the Department of Conservation, are you aware of that process, or have you been contacted by the... Sorry, did you hear me before? You're aware that the concession process from the Department of Conservation is either about to start or has started, and have you been contacted or been made aware that that process has got to be worked through to allow the restoration or the rescue and restoration of the pilot wharf at Aramoana?
Yeah, we're aware that that is about ready or going to happen, but we actually consider that a separate process from us talking to our elected councillors, because you as elected councillors have made a decision to proceed, and we want to talk to you about it. Andrew, I've rung you numerous occasions saying, where are you? Where's, you know, I could really get a bit emotional about it right about now, because we've really tried talking to you a lot and we've had no luck. So the concession process is a legal process, but we really want, Andrew, we really want you to front at Aramoana and to talk to us.
And you're aware that there is no proposal at this point, and part of the promotion of the restoration has been to effectively identify that the project is essentially to replace like with like, rather than any cycleway connection or any commercial aspect. Are you aware that that's the main intent of the project?
Yeah, but if you're replacing like with like, then you have no jetty because it's not a functioning jetty.
Councillor Calvert.
Your presentation, that was really interesting. I'm just wondering what you know about, since it's
Hillary, can you use your mic?
I'll just say it out loud.
Okay.
Do you know anything about, considering that it is a reserve at the moment and that nothing can happen there without dock, essentially, what attitude do they have to your concerns? Did they come to you at all? I know we haven't come to you, but did they come to you and say anything about whether they're concerned that the jetty would have any effect, or that they're happy that it won't, or that they're not worried about the species, or they are worried? Or have you had any conversations with them about it?
We have a lot of conversations with DOC because we work really closely in terms of looking after yellow-eyed penguins and sea lions. But with any relationship with a government department, it becomes a little bit more difficult when you start talking about concessions. And I guess they feel the need to not say too much because they're the ones that are going to be left holding the concession baby. Having said that, I think you really need to ask DOC what their position is, because legally that is it's an ecological reserve, and the animals are fully protected, and I think it's going to be difficult for them to grant a concession given that it's fully protected. I could be wrong, I'm not DOC, but you can bet when we hit the concession process, we'll be fighting to save Arowana again, Hillary.
Are they obliged to accept an application for a concession if somebody makes one? I still have in my head this fantasy that if somebody went to DOC and said, can I do such and such on your land, that DOC would say you'd need a concession, and they'd say, well, can I apply for one? And DOC would say, well, there's no chance you'd get one in that instance, or give it a go or something. I know you don't speak for them, I'm just wondering whether...
My personal opinion is, as you say, a concession process can be declined right before it's begun, and we do believe that the answer should be no from DOC, and we will be talking to them about saying no to any concession, because it's just such a crazy idea within an ecological reserve. And to my mind, given what Alan and I were talking about before with the salt marsh and the group being formed to work through that process, about 6 different organisations, they've always told us nothing will happen until we all agree. And I honestly think that what's going to happen here is DOC's going to say to the Dunedin City Council, here it is back again, you guys consult, because we won't see a concession until everyone's in agreement. I really honestly think that's going to happen.
Yeah, can I say the group that's been working with DOC, and it represents the local community, the Tangata Whenua, Forest and Bird, I'm there from the university point of view. We're looking progressively at trying to discourage, if not prevent, vehicles from getting access into that area. There are notices, we've changed the orientation, we've blocked off one road, and at this stage we haven't succeeded. So the final stage that Department of Conservation recognises as appropriate action is a gate locked with keys allocated to bona fide visitors, the locals and so on. They're reluctant to see that as a last resort. We're keen to have any method that will discourage, if not prevent, vehicle access onto the salt marsh. And at this stage, we have not succeeded. So we're expecting another meeting with the department, with the group, to see where to from here.
Alan, picking up on that, is one of the things you're asking for is council support for that proposition that that vehicle access be denied or prevented, because obviously council has no jurisdiction at all over the piece of land, over the salt marsh. It's not ours. But are you asking for council support in that regard as well?
Definitely, yes.
Okay.
The city has an interest there in terms of the physical structure of the wharf, but it should have an interest in the area from a part of the wildlife capital of New Zealand. I mean, that is a complement to the other side, the Tairoa Head side, complements it in a major way. When the smelter was being discussed, the use of Aramoana as a resting area for albatross was considered to be significant in the context of the smelter. So they complement each other, and the city should have an interest in it from its tourist potential, and it's the fact that we've got a pristine salt marsh so close to a major city is very unusual, and the city should cherish that, be aware of that, and use whatever its powers are to defend that.
Thank you, Madam. Just further to that last question from the Mayor, you did say in your previous comments that the Department of Conservation wasn't prepared to restrict access at this point. Is that right?
The Department of Conservation is prepared to allow bona fide vehicles out to the end of the spit where there's a house. Other than that, it's to bona fide people who are known to respect the area, the locals basically, or if Forest and Bird wants to go, they could get the key for a particular occasion. Otherwise, the gate is locked. In other words, vehicle access is denied, but public access, walking access, would be encouraged.
So if vehicle access is denied, how are the vehicles that did the damage that you showed us in the photograph, how are they getting onto the salt marsh?
But free access at present, there's nothing to prevent them.
All right, and what's the Department of Conservation doing about that?
There's a notice there to say only bona fide vehicles respect the salt marsh, and trying to encourage people, enlighten people that the salt marsh is of value, and please refrain from intruding on it. But that notice is clearly not working.
Thank you.
Councillor Wiley, and just been advised by the GSOs that because they've been asleep for a while, pressing them a couple of times might wake them up. So,
well, I've got action this time. I'm just referring to the email that we received on the 29th of July. I understand Mayor Cole responded to you on that one. Yeah. The other thing is, so you're against the jetty being built or being reconstructed?
The problem.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yet. So in other words, you'd like that whole area from the house onwards, basically no public access?
No, public access is fine. The problem we would have, at the moment, numbers of using the ecological reserve for recreational walking or walking their dogs is increasing because the road's been improved over the years. So what we say is if you do up your jetty at the end and you have a cross-harbour ferry using it, and then you have kayakers and triathlons using it, then you increase the use of the area. And when you increase the use of the area, you scare away the animals that live in the Aramoana Ecological Reserve.
So you would be opposed to the walkers and the cyclists using that in that basis?
No, not opposed to walkers. At the moment, everyone has free access to the Aramoana Ecological Reserve. And that's not a problem because the numbers of people using the reserve are generally low. Sometimes in summer it's really high. But if you have a sea lion pup born there in February on a beach like we have with Lena, DOC then does have a problem with controlling people and dogs because there are far too many of them around. Certainly in terms of cyclists, the Mayor's discounted a cycleway, so I don't think cyclists are an issue. But in terms of people, particularly with yellow-eyed penguins, and the sea lions, they just don't like hanging around with us.
Can I add that Forest and Bird funded and built an interpretive walk, including a boardwalk, out into the edge of the salt marsh. It goes about 150 metres out into the salt marsh with interpretive panels, and that's an ideal viewing place. You can appreciate the salt marsh without intruding on it. You can see the birds and so on. It's a very popular area. Mayor Suki Turner, in fact, opened it in the late 70s, and the city had a major interest in it then, and we're saying they should still retain that interest.
Okay,
Sorry, Andrew, I'm just going to interrupt. We have to move before
Okay.
1:30 to extend public forum, so I'll come back to you. Kate's happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Seconded, Councillor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? That's carried. Back to you, Councillor. Thank you.
I guess I'm a supporter of the jetty, because, and I can totally understand what you're saying about the salt marsh, so I'm not going to, but I'm sort of getting an understanding that you prefer no people to be there so the wildlife would have full reign.
And I think I'm pretty sure what the Conservation Act says is that the area is fully protected, and that, to use Judge Skelton's words from the Smelter days, I wasn't around, but he used the terms, Arrowmina is unaffected by the hand of man, and that is why it's really special, because it doesn't have high development. So, in terms of people walking around, no problem.
Okay, I put it this way, I look forward to coming out and visiting, because
great.
I need to obviously get a better understanding of it, but
Cool, that's two so far. Okay.
Can I just add, as part of the EIA for the smelter proposal, they had a bund, the smelter was to be on non-tidal land. There was a bund wall to prevent any effluent from the smelter extending onto the salt marsh, and the salt marsh was designated a wildlife reserve in the smelter proposal. And that's one reason why, when the smelter did not proceed, the values were recognised in the planning tribunal, and it was designated an ecological area on the basis of those high ecological values, even though the Harbour Board at the time made an attempt to get it retrieved as industrial land. They failed.
Any further questions? If not, thank you very much, Bradley and Alan, and all of you for coming along, and I think there are a few people back there as well for coming along. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mics have got all funny. All right, everybody. Welcome, Mr. Brown. And you're going to speak. You've got a presentation to discuss with us today about St Clair erosion. You're speaking as an individual or as part of a group?
As an individual, I guess recently there's a lot of interested people, but at this stage, as an individual.
Okay. Well, in that case, if I could ask you to keep your points to about 5 minutes, and then we'll tease anything out with questions afterwards.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Over to you.
Okay. Madam Chair, councillors and Mayor Cole, thank you for the opportunity to come here today and make this submission. Little background about myself. I'm a St Clair resident. My property backs on to the sand dune off Victoria Road, so I'm at the sand face, you might say. I enjoy, along with hundreds of other people, thousands of other people, the St Clair amenities. I swim, I still surf, I fish and I dive, and I enjoy all the cafes and everything that St Clair has to offer. It's a very, very special place. I have deep concerns at the recent level of erosion and what's been happening over the years, but over the very recent past. particularly in respect of Area 2. And that's the area in the Tonkin-Taylor report that goes from the surf club to the Scout Hall, where the walking track was. Particularly, I've looked at this for a while and thought, well, council's got it in hand because they say they have. We've got a holding pattern. I guess there's something happening. Eventually, we will see some action. But there was an article in the ODT that just got me a bit fired up. On the 8th of July, there was a comment here from your manager, Richard Saunders. His comment was that the Dunedin City Council has no immediate plans to replace sand lost from dunes at city beaches. I can understand that, it didn't go far. And this is what really concerned me. Instead, it will monitor the situation, continue to seek advice, and again consider long-term options for the area. Now that really concerned me. Tonkin-Taylor report released in 2011, and the recommendation was for council for 1 to 10 years to adopt a holding pattern, with cautions that climatic events changes may well require that council look inside that 10-year period to shorten it. 10 to 50 years, there was other recommendations quite strong. I've circularised, and I hope everybody's got it, the photos and very brief extracts from both the Fitzharris report and the Tonkin-Taylor report, so I guess everybody has seen that. So I'd now like to take you through those photos. Hope my eye tech keeps up with my limited knowledge. This is a series of photos that I commissioned myself on the 24th of July. I'll just quickly go through them. You're familiar with them, so I don't need to say a lot. And that's the result of the last 6 weeks' event. Not as big as I'd hoped, but can you see the red line just above the sand? That's an estimate. I've had surveyors do that, so that we're getting as accurate as we can, but that is an estimate of where the dune face has moved in the last six weeks. Go on to the next week. I can only refer to it as an estimate. It can't be any more accurate than that. That's a shot from February 2013. It's off council's own rating website, and again it's hard to see there, but you've got your own copies. That red line shows that there's been approximately, and it's my approximation, 15 metres inland of sand dune lost over the last 6 weeks. And again, shown a bit better, the July 2015 shot. Now, I'll just quickly go through these photos. That's the state of the sand dunes, of the sand sausages at the moment. And a little further north, there's 3 and 4 empty sand sausages, and a little further north again, it's gone now, but there was a sand sausage at 100 metres out in a surf break off the opposite the St Kilda Surf Club. That's what's happening to your sand sausages. wrapped round what's left of the poles, which is one of the reasons why there's considerably fewer there now. That's the top of the face of the sand dune as it was on the 24th. That's the safety gate at the back of the Scout Hall where the pathway exited. That erosion is right to the edge of that and further. And again. That's interesting. That's the steps from a little further on the existing seawall. I just don't know how bright that is to dump it over the side. I just can't see the logic in that. I'm amazed at that. Standing back, the shot again. I can only estimate the height of that, but it seems to me it could be about a face of about 15 metres. That's at the back of the playing fields with the power cables now sitting out on the face, and again you'll be aware of that. That's some of the rubbish that's coming out. That's water pipe or sewer pipe. I'm not quite sure, but it's sitting on the beach now. And again, giving you an idea of just how steep that eroded face is. All the trees that you see there in that photo have subsequently gone. The erosion has moved back from the 24th of July. It's taken all of that. And there's a pretty dramatic idea of just how far it is. Those trees on the skyline have gone. Can you see that stake there? I put that stake in about the 15th of July to indicate the line of erosion. That stake is now at the bottom. That's another stake that I put in right at the top there. You can see the orange piece just under the arrow. That stake is now gone. That one was 6 metres back from the first one. And that photo there you've seen. Okay. Right down the bottom here there's hopefully another one. No, it's not there unfortunately, but you may have seen this. I'll just pass around copies. Oh, it's just sorry, I'll hold on to this one, but I've had marked up. I've changed my method of trying to measure the erosion and the progress. I've now gone landward. The last of the macrocarpus on that photo, the most northern macrocarpa, I've taken a mark on the trunk, so it's immovable. I won't get a GPS mark on that, but it's a stake in the sand for measuring from, and I have measured from that tree trunk out to the face of the eroding sand dune. And I've marked on that plan the 3 measurements to date, the last being the 6th of August. Now, on the 24th of July, the sand dune face was 31.7 metres from that trunk, inland, directly inland. On the 4th of August, it was back to 27 metres. On the 6th of August, it was 23.2. Now those measurements, those are accurate. They can be checked and they'll be within millimetres of anybody else doing that. So we can rely on that. Part of any remedial work of the damage that's there at the moment in section 2 would be in some form or other protection of the sand dune and the ever steepening face of it in some form. But in doing that construction, and I'm sure Doug will be able to comment on that, that vertical face will need to be battered back to some extent, otherwise it'll keep collapsing. When you take that batter back into account, and I don't know how much batter you would need, whether it would be 5 or 10 metres, because we're looking at a wall that's, yeah, it's 15 metres high. There's a fair bit of it. It could be around about that. Then the top of the sand dune starts to approach that last tree. Now that last tree is just above the boundary of the closest house fronting Victoria Road. It's a really, really serious situation we've got now. As we speak, there's not a lot you can do about it because of the weather patterns, but as soon as it is at all possible, you've got to get on, implement the decisions of those 2 reports, because they're quite clear, and begin your protection work. There's been discussion on using sand sausages again. As an observer, sand sausages work fine as an interim measure, provided they are maintained, and those sand sausages sadly haven't been. But still, there's the need for this buried backstop wall that the Tonkin-Taylor refers to, a hard wall, as Fitzsimmons' report refers to, and it's just got to be put in place. The cost of that is infinitesimal compared to the cost of losing the game and having that sand dune breached. It has happened before, way back. It happened, I'll get my dates, in 1883 opposite Forbury Park, in 1891 and in 1898. So it's not impossible. If nothing happens or nothing significant happens, it will happen again. And if that happens, you're looking at South Dunedin. So when I say the cost of doing this work properly is infinitesimal compared to goodness knows what might happen. So they're both swings of the pendulum.
Can I ask you, Mr. Brown, just to wrap up, or if you can? Thank you. And we'll go to questions.
All right, I'll just very briefly talk about the high tide red alert days that I circulated. They are days that are common enough in nature, and when combined with high tide, wind patterns, etc., they can cause quite serious onshore erosion. We've just had one of those events, and it's quite conceivable that we'll get others before Christmas. You can't change that, but what you can do, and I strongly urge Council, is to, you've got the information, you've got the recommendations, get on, get your engineers to start their design work on what it's going to be, so that as soon as the weather is suitable and the opportunity is there, you can immediately put that work in place.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, are you happy to take questions?
Sure.
Thank you. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, sorry, I know you can see the picture. You're saying this red arrow here, August 6th, that is where this erosion line is right back to there now?
Correct.
That's as of 2 days ago.
Yep, that's on 6th, yes.
Now, I came and had a look with you last week, last Saturday, so it's significantly back even since then.
Yes, it is.
Yep. Now, just one thing I hadn't realised, but did you say this, you say they breached in the 1880s. Can this, a bit like the sand on the beach, ever rebuild itself, or is it most unlikely?
Well, no, the sand can rebuild itself. In the last 12 months, for instance, we've seen sand almost up to the top of the innermost pile that was there. It was only that far short. And then sometimes within a couple of days it's gone again. So the answer to your question is yes, it can rebuild itself. But the issue is right at the moment, this significant section of erosion that's exposed without any protection, and wave action at the bottom of a metre brings down a metre and a metre more from the top. So that's an immediate problem right now.
Yep.
Almost, well not almost, but it's another issue, and of course it's related, is the absence and the replenishment of the sand. I'm not even trying to address that today.
Yep. Yep. Can I ask another question? That is, if we do absolutely nothing, based on what you've seen since when the first big storm was, July, is it possible that with the wrong conditions this could breach this calendar year, or, in your opinion, could?
In my opinion, no. I think there's still enough depth of sand dune there to survive the rest of the year, and I think your own engineer said that something similar a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Further questions? Councillor Whiling, Councillor Hall.
Bill, I also came and visited last week, and we had a good look at the sausages. How effective do you think they've been?
If they'd been maintained from the time they were put in, I think they would have been very effective. I've been down there at times when we've had storm conditions and high tide, when the sausages were in good condition, and they really do work. They're effective. As soon as you get damage to a sand sausage, it bleeds out the sand quite quickly. It's certainly not irrecoverable. You've got the next day or perhaps the next week to get back and repair it and refill it, and that's what hasn't been happening. So quickly enough, they completely empty of the sand, and they flop around in the waves and then in the surf, and they roll up and they get cut by a lot of the loose rock and debris that's there, and they're destroyed.
So they get damaged by the loose rock?
By loose rock,
okay.
Yes.
Looking at Middle Beach today, what do you see as being more effective, the sausages or the baskets of rocks?
I just don't know. Don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hall.
In 2011, the toe of the sand dunes was that close to those piles you couldn't get a machine past. Can you remember that?
I do, yes.
And what distance would they be away from the toe of the sand dunes now in metres?
Crikey.
Could have been quite
Look,
large.
it could be 20 metres. Could be more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how much beach of sand dunes have lost right along that area.
Potentially, yes.
Because the walkway used
well, should I say in that immediate area, area 2.
Because the walkway used to be about, from memory, about 8 metres, maybe 10 metres to the top of the sand dune in 2011.
Yes, that'll be right.
Yeah. So there's a massive amount of loss.
Incredible amount. Look, I'll leave this with you rather than hold you up, but that's a very loose estimate, my estimate, of the amount of sand that's been lost off that face. Incredible.
Kate.
Thanks, Bill. Just looking at the DCC monitoring site, which I know you're aware of, discussed it before, do you think that one part of this understanding the issue would be that we need to have monitoring sites a lot further north along the beach than we are currently doing?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
Do you think one part of the problem is that the monitoring that we are doing only goes as far as the Surf Lifesaving Club and not taking it right along the beach, that we should be actually monitoring the whole interface, or the whole beach frontage, rather than just the points that we're doing at the moment, which is under the hard servicing?
I'm amazed that you haven't been. I had assumed that the monitoring was the whole beach.
Sorry, we may be doing that, but we're not showing that on the website. We're doing just the hard surfacing area on the website. But I'll find that out.
Well, yes, you certainly should be, yeah. I mean, the reports cover the whole beach, and they section it up, but they still cover the whole beach, and their recommendations are in respect of that exposed area.
Okay.
Any further questions? If not, Bill, I've got one. You talked in your presentation about the fact that you would expect over time for the camber of the sand dune effectively to right itself, or to become less steep, as it were.
Yes.
Is your sense that what you're seeing over the last couple of weeks is further erosion at the toe of the dune, or do you think it's more a case of the camber righting itself? And presumably our monitoring would show that, but you may have a view.
Okay. No, it's at the toe of the dunes. It's.
Right.
I've been along. Probably shouldn't have been there, but I have in the heavy weather, and you can see a wave come in, smack the bottom of the face, and a whole face of sand slide down, and then above that quickly comes another run. Yeah, so it's certainly nibbling away at the bottom of the dune, which causes the whole face to collapse.
Yeah, okay.
And throughout those reports, you'll see the comment or the phrase regularly, over steepened dune face, and that's exactly what we've got, the issue. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, thank you very much for your presentation, and I'm sure that we'll be engaging with staff over it in the next little while. So
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be available to council staff at any time after this for further discussion or monitoring, and I've taken the liberty of giving you a copy of the summary of the notes for the ODT. So ideally we should all be talking up this with the same facts.
thank you.
Thank you, councillors.
Through the chair, can I ask we also look at Tomahawk Beach? Because looking at Tomahawk Beach in the last 2 months, there's been a lot of damage from what there previously was, and a lot of erosion.
I think Mr Saunders may have a comment on this, but my understanding is that staff from Transport and Parks have been looking at a range of the different beaches that have been affected by the storms and the winter conditions over the last few months, and that we will be getting a paper back on those. Transport. Yeah.
Not in detail at others, although
right.
There are a few on the list that we're not comparable today.
Okay.
But we can follow that up.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Thank you. Thank you. I think on the other matter, the Aramoana matter, I think everyone will have seen the Mayor's, was that circulated to everyone, the Mayor's response to Mr Kernell, and I think what we could do is just get a memo from staff as to where the process is at and what the DCC's role is in that as of now. Is that, yeah, and then everyone is on the same page around that.
I would like to be able to, maybe not here, to be able to consider the council's attitude to supporting dock and restricting vehicle access. I don't quite know what the process would be for us to be able to do that, and it certainly doesn't impinge on DOC's responsibilities, but we could show support for that. So perhaps leave that with the chair.
Yep, well, we can discuss that. Great. Thank you.